Hey everybody, and welcome back to the third video related to Firestore cloud database on Firebase. So what I'm going to do in this video, I'm going to show you how to download, how to read user information, those information that we added last time in the previous lecture, and how to update user information, user profiles, okay? So just to recap what we did last time, we created this table or this collection, and we were able to insert these data into the user table. All right, and we talked about the authentications, and we talked about how to set up the rules. So the last thing we did with the rules is that we included this rule about the user. You can only update it or read it if you are the owner of that account. Otherwise, you can create you can create a new file or a new document as long as you are registered within the application. All right, so let's go to the application itself and show you what I've done. I've done a little bit so to avoid all this confusion and then to avoid cluttering all the code in one profile, in one screen. So in the past, we had only this view controller. And when you click on the user action, it takes you to register, log in, log out. I've created another view controller, and it has name, email, phone. It doesn't have password. The email is grayed out. You can't update it. And I have a file called, I have a button called update. Same stuff that we have in here. And I created a view controller class. And in that view controller, I have imported the database and the authentication, did the connection. And this is from the previous video. So we did all of this in the previous video. We included a reference to the database, and I have an action. When you click on the update, we will write the code. And I included the stuff that we did last time just to show you how we can use this to update. Okay, so if you've done the last video, just include it in here, and then we'll modify this to update the user details, all right? Okay, so what's the first thing we need to do? The first thing when you want to update a user profile, the first thing you need to do is that you need to read. You need the user information, right? So first thing we need to get user information. Now, this example is simple because it has only a few fields, but in reality, you can have a lot more. So you can do that on your own. So what am I going to do? I'm going to do, when we first come to the screen, if I'm already logged in, what should happen is that the information from the database should appear on those fields that we have in the storyboard. This, at least the name, the email, and the phone number should appear on the screen. If not, we are not logged in and we have a problem, we need to display that message in here or direct them to the login screen, all right? So let's go back in here. So I'm going to create another function here, and I'm gonna call this function load user details. And what I'm going to do in this one, I'm going to get all the detail for that user and put them in the screen, so we know that we are actually looking at our own profile. So how do we do that? First, you want to make sure that the user is logged in. So I'm going to say guard let user ID equal the auth framework, auth function, class object, and then we're going to say current user and give me the UID, right? If that exists, that means the user is already logged in. So what should I do? I should say else. If it is not, if this value is null or nil, what should we do? We say current user is going on. What's going on here? Value is optional, so we need to either wrap that or just put it like that. If this value is null, we should say something, right? We should say print or message self.message.text . user not logged in, please log in first, right? Or you can direct them to the screen where they need to log in. So you can issue, you know, like direct them to, or fire a segue, or you show a view controller that allow him to allow him to allow him to log in. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is return. So what happens is that this guard statement will check if the user is logged in. It will continue. Otherwise, it will display this message in the screen, and it will and it'll ask him, and it'll we return out of this function. Okay, so that's the first thing. The next thing that we need to do is that we need to get the details about that user. How do we get the details about that user? So we can say just to break it into smaller, I'm going to say let ref document equal database dot, oops, I need to do that, database dot collection. What's the name of the collection? The name of the collection is users. That's the one that we created yesterday. Remember, here it is. So users, right? Users. And then what are we going to do? We're going to say dot document. What document we're looking at? The document that we're looking at is the user ID, right? Related to that document, to that user. Remember when we tied the document name with the user profile, with the unique identifier? So that's what we need to be looking at, is the user ID document. So that's just a reference. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to say get the document for that user. So how do I do that? We say ref document, reference document. You could have done it in one line, but I thought I'll break it and be easier than writing a big bunch of code. Okay, so we can say write document, get document, and what do we want? We want to say get document. So we're going to say get document with the completion handler. So the completion handler would tell us that if we got the data or if we didn't get the data, if we have an error. All right, so I'm going to do that. Select the first one, and then I'm going to double click here. So here is your document snapshot, which is basically what do you have on the server right now. Okay, I'm going to call that document, and then this one is going to be my error. All right. And here's the code. So what does that do? It says, first, I validate, make sure that I'm logged in. If I am logged in, I'm going to give the user ID of the current user. Then I'm going to say, I want to look at this collection with that user ID. That means the title of that document, making sure that I'm only getting that document. And then I'm going to say, this reference document, get that document. So in this, we're gonna have either an error. So if I say if error, or if let user equal document data, dot data, what does that do? We're going to do this. Otherwise, we're going to say we have an error, and we're going to do this. All right. So it says here that if the user that we're looking at, if the we're going to create an object called user. This user is actually the data that we're getting from the database. This data is nothing but a dictionary, just like we did here. We have these dictionaries, right? The ID, the attribute and the value, the attribute and the value, and the attribute and the value. So what I can do is that I can take these attributes basically and extract them from this data object. So how do I do that? So for example, if I can say let username or since we have text fields, I'm going to say txt name, for example, dot text equal to what? Equal to user, and then I'll put the attribute that I want. Now, how do I know the attribute? I can look it on here, or the best way to do it is that you go back to your Firebase and look at your database and make sure that you are looking at the fields that you want. And I think that's the last time we added. So I have username like this, user phone is like this. I didn't add country, but you can add country and city if you want. So now if you go back, so it is username and then user phone, okay? So we will put here, user name, right? And we don't know what type of object it is, so I'm going to cast it to a string, all right? txt phone, same way, dot txt equal user, and that we will put in here. Let's user phone is right here, right? So it is user phone, and as what? As string. What about the email? The email is not stored in the database, right? So where am I going to get the email? Remember, the email is in the current user, so I can get the email from here, all right? So I'm going to copy this guy, command copy. So what's going on here? txt. Because it's completion. All right, so we're going to do self here. And then we're going to do self here. All right, and then we're going to do this one as a string. All right, and then how to get the email. So I'm going to say self.email, txt email. Where do you get that from? .text. We're going to get it from the current user, but not from the UI ID. There is something called email from here, and I can get the email. All right. Otherwise, and then I can put the message here, self message, saying that the user that was found, user found. Or I can say press update. Press update to update information. Profile information. All right. Otherwise, we're going to say user not found. You can say user not found. Could be any error, right? Or you can just print out the error. Okay, so what we did in all of this is just to get the user information. So review what we've done is that basically you will get, we need to load the information of the user when the user log in or press the navigate to this screen. So when they navigate to this screen, we call this function, and then in this function we get the user, the current user ID, we get their document, we check, we get their data, right? And then if we have data, we display the data. If we have an error, we say the user is not found, right? So how to test that? So how to test it, all I need to do now is that when I, in the view that load, first thing I'm gonna say, load user details, all right? Let's test it and see what happens. And if I run it, when I click on the user update, I should get the data for that user. So this is my current user, right? So when I click on update, after I make the change, whatever update I make for the phone and the name should be reflected on the cloud itself, all right? So let's do the second part. All right, notice that before I do that, notice that why was I able to read the information for my current profile? If you notice, if you go back to the Firebase, you notice in the rules that says I can read the information as long as the user is the same one as the document ID. What if I try to log in with a different user? Let me show you what's going to happen. If I go to the database, if I go to the user table, we are looking at which one? I think we were looking at, let me see this, both of them are the same. We don't know which one it is. All right. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just make a dummy one. See if it actually works. So what I'm going to do, go back to the code, and I'm going to put any dummy user ID here for now, just to show you what will happen. Instead of the user ID, I'm going to put any number, 122222, any number here. See what happens. All right. So now I'm going to stop it and then run it. So what I'm trying to test here, do I have the rules set up correctly? Can I read the data of a user profile if I am not the one that is logged in on the system? Meaning what? Meaning, can I look at somebody else's data? Assume that this is another person on the database, but it's not going to be found. Let's see, maybe I should print, just to show you quickly. I'm going to print this one so we know which one we are dealing with. So I'm going to say print user profile, print user ID. All right, just so we know that which one we're looking at, and we try to change it with a different one. All right. So I'm going to run it. And I'm going to click on that. Okay, so that is the ID that we are looking on, CKJ. All right, so if I go to the Firebase, this is that one that we're looking at. So what am I going to do? I'm going to copy this guy and try to access his record. I'm not logged in. I'm logged in as this guy, but I'm going to try to read this guy's data. Let's see what happens if we do that. So if I go in here, instead of that, I'm going to put this and see what happens. Okay. Obviously, this is a string, so I'm going to put strings around it. Okay, compile it. What's going on here? Document. All right. Okay. Compile it. And then run it. If I click on this, I should not be getting any information here. I said user not found, but it's basically I don't have permission to look at that guy. See, you see this? Missing or insufficient permission. Why that happened? Why I don't have permission to look at somebody else's data? Why? Because when we set up the rules, we said you can read only your own document if the user ID that is logged in is the one that is actually with the name of that document. So that guarantees that I am that person. All right, so that is it. That's how you read the information. So we go back. This is how you read user data, and this is how you guarantee that you can only look at your own profile. So I'm going to change that back to here and user ID, and then that should fix it. What about updates? What should we do with update? Well, I have the code that allow me to save information like we did in the previous video. Well, the set data is the same. You use the same one to update data. The only difference, when you do set data, if that user does not exist, what happens, it actually writes a new record in that document with that document name, which is that document name. But what if the user exists? If the user exists, it'll update the fields that you only send to that document, all right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this and do what with it? We're gonna add it, copy it, command copy. We've done this in the previous video. So if you haven't done this in the previous video, go ahead and do it in the previous video and come to this one. So what I'm going to do, I'm gonna add it in here, right? So I'm gonna say database, collection, user ID. It doesn't know what the user ID is. So what I'm going to do, I'm gonna do the same thing here, command copy, and then to get the user ID, make sure that they're still logged in. So this is just to secure your application, all right? So I'm gonna say, get the user. If it is not logged in, do this. Otherwise, I am gonna update the document that belongs to that user with the new information. How do I get the new information? You simply put, for example, txt name.text here, all right? And the phone is going to be txt.phone.text. Obviously, you can't change the email because your email is the one that is registered on the system. And the rest is not gonna, we're not gonna update it, all right? So, so in here, it will say update, okay, what is this? String, yeah. Fine, they are strings, so leave them as that. If we have an error, we'll come back and fix it. Okay, so what I'm going to say, if we got an error, if we don't have an error, that means the user information got updated. Otherwise, we did not update the data, right? So I'm gonna say here, self, user details, profile updated. Oh no, this is error. Profile not updated. And then here, otherwise we'll say the user profile got updated. Again, I copied the exact same thing that we did last time in the previous video. So you don't need to start from scratch on this one. All right, so I'm gonna say here, user profile updated. Obviously, you can do this in a better way. If you want to do it properly, you probably would say here, let username, and then validate them. If you want to do, you do validation first, validate first, and then after that, you issue this command, all right? So same thing that we did in the previous one. We say instead of, we use set data, it knows that if you have a document within the same name, it updates the fields that you're sending it to it. Otherwise, what happens, otherwise it will write a new one, okay? Okay, got it. All right, so now let's test it and see what happens. So where do we update it? When we click on the update button. So, all right, so let's click on run. And we click on user profile. My name is Ali. I'm gonna change it to Ali Farhat. And then I'm gonna click on, then I'm gonna add 6 to the end to see if that actually get updated. So if I click on update, we should get user profile updated. If I go back and then look at it, it's updated. If I go to the database and look at that data for that user, it's updated, all right? Okay, so it actually got rid of the other fields. All right, so this is a problem here, right? So we need to make sure that we send the entire fields that we need to update, okay? So that's it for the updating the data. And again, so make sure here you send the entire field and then list the one that you want to update, all right? Because apparently I was wrong on that one. You need to look at all the fields that you're sending it and update it with that. There is another one called merge, and I think that's the one that you would use. Use merge instead of just set data. You'll use set data with merge equal to yes, and then it will merge the two together. Okay, it'll update the ones that you have, and then the one that that already there will stay in there. All right. So that is it for this video, this tutorial. Allow you to do, allow you to update and read the user information, okay? Uh, so we've covered in the first one how to insert. Now we know how to update, how to read. The next one will show you how to delete, and then maybe how to do that merge, all right? And maybe download the list. All right, so I'll see you in the next video.